Hello, I'm Georgia. Thanks for joining me again. Today I'm going to be doing a technique that's called mokame gane, and I've actually looked it up to see what it means, and it's a Japanese term that comes from, it says here that wonderful AI, it says the name comes from the distinctive layered patterns that resemble natural wood grain. Well, I know mine is not going to look like natural wood grain today, but I suppose it's the layers. That's what they're talking about. That's the technique that we're going to be doing today. And the clays that I'm using are Fimo Professional in purple and Cernit Pearl White. And what you're seeing me do is add some colour to some of the Cernit Pearl White. Now, I have heard that what you should do is that you should always add colour. Sorry, that's my dog drinking water again in the background. That you should always add colour to white, not the other way round. You don't add white to a colour. So I'm gradually adding a little bit of purple. It's trial and error to get the colour that you want. What I wanted lilac, which I think I've got there, purple and white, and I'm just putting them all against each other to see what they look like. So I'm happy with those colours, and I'm going to roll out just the plain colours. Generally I roll everything out on my Atlas 150 on 0. But I think I wanted the pearl colour much thinner, so I have run that out much thinner. Then all you have to do is just start stacking them. And I try and neaten it up a little bit. And then obviously you can reuse all these little bits if you need to make up the levels, because when you're pressing down, which is what we will be doing later, it doesn't really matter that it's not one full piece of clay. So roll them down so that they all bind together. And you can run it through the pasta machine as well at this stage. So stack them on top of each other. Make sure that you're not stacking, like if I stack the white to the white, we'd end up with a very thick layer of white in the middle. So make sure that you have the alternate layers. Roll it out again. Cut and stack again. I always find that I end up with far more of this than what I actually intended to make when I do this. So I have decided that I'm going to do another layer of it, and I have run it through the pasta machine this time, so it's made it much bigger. Stack again and cut in half and stack again. Now you will see in a moment where I've gone wrong with this. I'll actually tell you now. What I've done is I've done too many layers, and when we eventually look at what the effect is, it is far too busy and you can't really see the pattern. So I'm forming it into a cube. Just keep rolling and rolling. Keep on rolling. You know when to stop when you've had enough. You just keep doing it until you think, oh, this is just about right now. And then you can take anything. That's a little set of tools that I've got, and just go and poke holes anywhere you want. But you can take anything and put impressions into the clay. And what you're doing is you're forcing the layers through each other so that you end up with a pattern, almost like striations that have been forced through. And I think there as well, I've gone wrong. I've perhaps put a little bit too much in there. I think they turn out okay, but they could have turned out far better than they have done. Then you close up all the holes that you have created. And you wouldn't think that you'd see anything at the end, but it's amazing. I love clay. It's just such fun working with it. And there, do holes on the other side again. As I said, I've done far too many. Apologies, the camera is literally right in front of me and I didn't have much room to be able to use all the tools. And I've realised as well, the colour, it's a bit yellow, and I know why that is now. I filmed this or recorded this on a really sunny day, and I thought, oh, I'll get away without using too many lights, but it's a lesson learned. I need to use all my lights when I'm recording. So reform it back into that cube again. And I use my silicone block to make it all nice and neat. My dirty silicone block by the looks of it. Or should I say well-used silicone block. I think I'm getting a bit carried away there. Definitely getting a bit carried away there. It is satisfying though doing that. Okay, now you can see the striations that have been formed, so you could cut it that way down if you wanted, which maybe I should have done. Right, that last little push was to make sure that it was secure on the ceramic tile, and then we start taking slices off. Now, you can see the pattern is very, very busy, extremely busy. And this part, it can always be, wow, look at that, or, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And I think this was one of those, I shouldn't have done that moments. I like to, with my videos, show you everything, not just the ones that work out the way that I imagine them in my head. So just roughly cut pieces off of it till you get to the end. And then join them all together. This stage it's fairly soft, so they all join together fairly easy. You can overlap them slightly. The aim is not to have gaps between the pieces. Obviously you can roll it out as well at the end, so that will always close up gaps. But when it's nice and soft, you can actually close them with your fingers. See what I mean about ending up with quite a bit of clay? Just form a slab. And there you can see, it almost looks like red cabbage to me. Obviously it's purple though, purple cabbage. I've rolled that through the pasta machine and you can see all the patterns there. I think what has saved this piece has been the Cernit pearl white, because it's just come out so pretty and it has combined with the other colours. Now because I've rolled that out quite thin, I need to put a backing sheet on it. So I'm using up all the scrap bits of clay that I've got and just joining other little pieces to it. And then I will roll them all together and run them through the pasta machine. Again, on a fairly thin setting, because you don't want to, if I say I roll the wand through on a 0, that's fairly thick as it is. So the backing sheet needs to be fairly thin. But that's the one that I have rolled through is thinner than a 0. I need to make a note of what I run these things through on. Right, off we go to the pasta machine, back again, and that's what it looks like all combined. And I've made it bigger and thinner. So there's the dog again. She does this every single time she hears me talking to nobody. And the next thing is she'll want to go out. Right, so put your pattern piece on top of the plane and burnish it down nicely so that they join together and there aren't any air gaps. Okay. I'm not using much force, I'm just sliding that roller across just to burnish it all very nicely down. And then get your cutters and I will dip them into cornstarch, which you can see there on the side. And I use that brush, oh, I've moved it over. I use the brush to be able to get into all the little corners in the cutter, because that's quite an involved cutter there. Choose where you want your pieces and just cut out. I like that cutter. Nice and simple. And you can't go wrong doing discs. If ever you've got clay just left over you're not sure of, just do some discs out of it because you will use them. I can tell I wasn't happy with that at all. Okay, and that little brush, I think I've said on a previous video, is great. It just takes off the little crumbs on the edges, and it's just a double-sided makeup brush. But it is quite dense on the thicker side. So do all your edges and the middle parts if you can, to save on sanding later on. And there you go. I'm going to put them in the oven on, because it's Cernit, I will put it on the temperature of the Cernit. There's never a problem combining the clays, so I will put that in at 130 for an hour. And these are the leftover pieces. Now I'm not going to give up on them, even though they're not exactly what I wanted. I'm sure there's something we can get out of them. And I think there's little bits of, I think there was some red that got caught up in that. So because it's a pattern, you can just dig your little tool in there and get rid of the colours. Yeah, I think I'm showing you there. There's little bits of red. Yeah, there's another piece there. Just dig it out. We will be rolling it through the pasta machine again, so any indentations will be rolled out again. So cut off the edges so that you're left with your patterned clay and more red. and then just start tearing off little pieces of it and laying them on top of each other. You can do this with any leftover bits of clay that you have. I'm going to use this as a background for a silk screen, which you'd think, oh, that's so busy. How on earth could you put a silk screen pattern on top of it? But the silk screen that I've used looks like a splashed paint effect, and that has worked quite well on there. So carry on, just use up all those little bits of clay. Try not to get any holes in there, any gaps. If you do, well, we're going to put that on the backing sheet again. Smooth it all down. You might have lumps and bumps, you know, areas that are thicker than others, but once you put that through the pasta machine, they'll all be the same thickness. And you can see the back there. There's a hole there, so we need a gap. I keep saying a hole. Gap is far nicer than a hole. So cover that up with little bits. Run that through the pasta machine. And that looks quite nice. Still a bit like red cabbage to me though. And that doesn't matter that it doesn't look great on that side, because we're going to be putting the patterns on top of it. So burnish it down so that the two layers stick together. Tidy it up, and I've textured the back as well. Okay, so now for the silk screen. Burnish it down so that it's stuck to the tile, and that's the splashed paint effect that I said that I would use. It's only a small silk screen. And make sure you burnish that down well. Now I'm going to undo all my work in a minute, because I will realise, and you will see, no, I thought I had, but I didn't there. So, okay, so I'm using Arteza titanium white there, Arteza acrylic paint, and that is a silicone brush, which is absolutely brilliant. I use it all the time. Just make sure you push down hard, or well, not hard. You push down well and firm so that the paint goes through. And there you go. That's the splashed or spilt paint effect. And I have just gone on top there to remove any excess paint. Now this is where I realise I can't do it on that tile, because that is quite a fiddly cutter that I'm going to use. So I'm going to bake it without removing it from the tile. So I've got a smaller tile here. And I'll burnish that onto it. There we go. Just burnish it on so that it sticks nicely when you cut it. Now these cutters, they're very effective, but they're quite fiddly, So get the brush, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. Get the brush and just go around all the edges with as much cornstarch as you can get in there. Tap it off. Can you see those very, very narrow sections? Now I can already sense that there's going to be a problem with those. But press down. And gradually wiggle it off. And can you see, look, the clay has got stuck in there. So I get these very thin needles and I just remove that clay out of there. Try and keep it as tidy as you can. And then obviously you now know, usually after you've done your first cut, you know the areas that are going to cause problems. So take extra care when you put in your cornstarch on. And that cornstarch is supposed to stop the clay getting caught, but it doesn't always. So I'm taking a little bit extra time and making sure I've got lots of cornstarch in there. Okay, and I want to do the opposite, like the mirrored effect there. So we've gone one way there so that the curves are there, and I need to, oh, I don't know what's on there. I need to do it in the opposite direction for that one. And also try and match up, even though it's a very random pattern, you still want to match up. You don't want, like, I wouldn't want to do a whole earring in that middle white section. I do want a bit of a pattern. I think I did some little ones, but it ended up where one had the pattern, a nice pattern on, and then the other one was mainly white. And to me, you know, that just doesn't match. So I didn't keep those. So press down again, just to make sure that it's cut through properly. I'm spending a bit more time on this one rather than fast forwarding it. So I apologise if these are things that everybody's saying, oh, we know that, go on, get on with it. Yeah, do a second cut. That's great, especially as I'm going to be leaving that on the tile and baking it on the tile. So more complicated cutters. Now you can see why I'm leaving that on the tile. If I try to take that off, it would distort the shape completely. So find a place. And that didn't cut too badly, actually, that one. Don't think I've used these before. Yeah, and do 2 cuts. And this is the little one. I don't know if you will see. Yeah, so that's I'm going to do it there. That's a nice little pattern. Okay, but where I do the other one, I do it right in the middle there, where it's mainly just white. And to me, those two don't match. So even though I bake them, they don't end up as earrings. Take out all your little bits, and there's quite a bit of tidying up on this one, especially those swirls, those curves. So I'm taking that little needle tool again and pulling out the little inserts that have been trapped. Oh, comes out the X-Acto knife and carefully cut those off. They do come out fairly easily. They just didn't pull off when I took the cutters off. And that's the beauty of doing a little tile. You can move it around so that you can approach from a different angle. And there they are, and those will go like the others. They will go in at 130 for an hour, and this is what they look like at the end. I've put resin on them and the shimmer has come out beautifully. I hope you've enjoyed this. Till we meet again. Oh, and if you do enjoy this, please like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.